What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Magic Mushroom Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Traveling Psychonaut. On this edition, I have a little clip from Mohze's trip report from the last edition, Tales from the Trip. Now, please be warned that there are some triggering moments in this clip, and it is not recommended to do high doses without a trip sitter or someone there to watch. And please, please, please do not just jump into a high dose like he's described. Start with a low dose and stay where you feel comfortable. And if you are going to do a high dose like he is referring to, please have a trip sitter, someone who is familiar with you and comfortable enough to handle the trip. And this is his experience. Please remember that everyone else will have a different experience. Well, you're first on the list here, so why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I got into magic mushrooms because I heard about the benefits that they could potentially offer to people such as myself, who I'm a combat vet deployed to Afghanistan in 2019. And then just a bunch of other stuff, man, with life. You know how it goes. But started out doing small stuff, and it kind of all culminated, I guess you could say, after about 3 months of doing, I think it was like 7 or 8 trips, ranging from 2 to 7 grams. It kind of culminated into what I have come to call my God trip, where I did 10 grams dry of penis envy. And it was a great trip. So I started out, I think it was, I recorded all on my GoPro, and I think the last time that I remember was 8:48. So I make them into a tea and then make a hot chocolate out of the tea to disguise the flavor, because I'm a bitch when it comes to the flavor of mushrooms. They're disgusting to me. But I drank the tea probably about 8:30. And I laid in bed, put on a sleep mask, so that way it just blocks all the light and I can get maximum visuals. And it was so cool. I started out in this trip. I was, the best way I can liken it, I was floating over this lake, and it was like little kids were throwing rocks into the lake, and I was watching the ripples of the water. But the only time it was blue was at the peak of the ripple, and everything else was black. So it was super, super cool and peaceful and somber. And I'm listening to some really peaceful music. And then from there, I kind of went into a factory of sorts, I guess you can say. It was a lot of blues and oranges not blues, whites, oranges, yellows, reds, and they were making something. I don't know what they were making, but I could see them making something, and it was super, super intense and vivid colors. Probably some of the most whitest whites and reddest reds I've ever seen in my life. And it was super captivating. And then it went from visual stuff to more to a kind of like like feeling in my body. And I had a conversation with God, and he said, "My son, this is your playground, and your playground is your half of the bed." I was in my half of the bed. The other half of the bed was my girlfriend. She was trip sitting me. And he's like, "I want you to explore your half of the bed." And so I became infinitely small, but I was also infinitely big, and it was the craziest feeling. And so I ended up flipping upside down in my bed, my head was where my feet go. And I was like essentially swimming in my bed underneath the covers and exploring this infinite universe that he had given me. And it was a black room with lots of purples and blues and super dark colors. And it was awesome. That was a lot of fun. And I ended up at one point, I was feeling my girlfriend's leg, because everything was new to me. It was kind of like I was reborn as a child. And so I was trying to figure everything out, and I got to her feet, and I remember I got to her feet, and I couldn't figure out what the word for feet was. So I was like, leg palms. And it was awesome. And I think at this time I had switched my music over to some Lorna Shore, which I don't know if anyone knows what Lorna Shore is, but there's symphonic death metal. So take a symphony and then you add in death metal screaming, and you kind of get Lorna Shore. And so then after that, I don't really remember where I went after this. For a period of time, I think I just kind of almost ended up passing out, because I was listening to my playlist and I don't remember anything. And time dilation began to hit really heavy. And I roll over and I give my girlfriend my phone so she could change songs for me. I roll over and I'm like, "Honey, what song am I on?" Because I didn't recognize what song it was on. I was completely blasted out of my mind. And she's like, "Oh, honey, you're on," I think I was on like Pain Remains Part 2, which is a 3-part song. And my playlist, I was probably I was probably 7 or 8 songs deep into my playlist, and I was like, there's no way I am that deep into my playlist. Like, it was nuts. Just, I thought it had been like maybe 30 seconds or a minute, but apparently it had been like 30, 45 minutes. So then I asked her to restart my playlist from Immortal by Lorna Shore, and I did that probably, I think I asked her to restart my playlist 3 times within probably about 45 seconds to a minute, and my trip started to slowly go south. And so finally she restarted it and everything settled in, and I started to get good. And then I rolled over to her and I jokingly said, I'm scared of falling off of the floor. And I didn't hear her say anything back because I had my earbuds in. But on the GoPro, she said, honey, you're not going to fall off the floor. By the way, I'm in my bed still at the time. At this time. Yeah.
Perception, eh?
Dude, it was weird. Like, I genuinely felt like I was hearing her talk through my earbuds. It was wild. And so I rolled back over, and about 10 seconds later, I rolled back over again and looked at her again with my earbuds in, and my trip mask is still on, or my sleep mask. And I'm like, I'm going to fall off the fucking floor. And like, there was like a sense of panic in my voice. And she kind of looks at me and she's like, honey, you're not going to fall off the floor. And so then I roll over, and about 5 seconds later, I roll back over again, and I grabbed my trip mask and I threw it across my room. And I screamed at her, I am going to fall off of the goddamn fucking floor. And I remember looking out my window, and at the time we lived on a farm, and my window, my bedroom window, it faced a tree line, and there were no trees. There was no green backyard. There was no fence line. It was just gray. And I was like, holy fuck. I am blasted out of my fucking mind right now. And so then I kind of curled up into a fetal position. And I at this point, this is my peak. I'm currently now actively peaking on 10 grams of penis envy magic mushrooms. And I ended up taking my earbuds out, and my earbuds were no longer earbuds. They were music. Music became a physical object. It was no longer a sound. And so I put them on my bedside table, and I was like, I don't want the music anymore. And my girlfriend was like, you don't want the music? And I was like, no, I just need complete silence right now. And for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, I just went completely silent in this fetal position. And in that time, it felt like the power of 1,000,000 souls surged into my body, and I essentially had the feeling and complex that I was God. I'm not a religious man. I've never been religious. To an extent, I almost kind of scoff at religion. I don't think religious people are shit. I don't think any of that. For me personally, it's not my gig. So, but I began this feeling that I was God. And so the only way that I could really comprehend and express my feeling was I broke down, and I fucking cried, dude. I cried. This is probably the hardest I've cried in 10 or 15 years. And I started out by just, you could hear me just kind of like, like a hamster squeak or a rat squeak. It was just beep. And I said that was the greatest musical experience of my entire life. Because for those of you who know, you take magic mushrooms, and everything becomes heightened. Color, scent, your vision, your taste, hearing, everything. It becomes heightened, and it becomes enhanced. And so music, when you're tripping, is just awesome. It is indescribable how incredible it is. So to hear a symphony of like violins and tubas and all that kind of stuff commingled with heavy metal or death metal was the most insane musical experience I've ever been through. And I broke down and I started crying, and I don't remember what happened because I went out of body in this moment. And the GoPro, it shows that I am screaming, I'm crying, like brutal, like just tears and snot coming out of my nose. I'm out of body climbing. I am physically climbing Mount Everest. And I guess I should take a step back real quick. I took this trip because I'm tired of my anxiety. Before this trip, I had 3 to 5 anxiety attacks a day just out of nowhere. Like, I'd be sitting at my desk at work, anxiety attack, and so I took this trip to go to the core of my anxiety and look it in the eyes and call it a punk bitch and make it my bitch instead of it making me its bitch. So then back to my peak. I'm out of body and I'm physically climbing Mount Everest, and I was climbing it and I'm like 2 steps away, and I then yelled and I like warped back into my body and I yelled, "I am God." And it was one of the most liberating and relieving feelings I've ever had. It was like I was completely at peace with myself, and I had just given all of my energy to climb this Mount Everest, which it was essentially my trauma, all my anxiety, depression, PTSD, all that stuff. That's what it was. That was the Mount Everest. And so I ended up missing the peak of Everest by like a step or two in this moment. And so then I was just thanking all the souls who entered my body to give me the power to climb that. Super special. The word is slipping my brain right now. It's not special. It's not religious. Whatever.
Exquisite.
Yeah,
not sure
exquisite.
awaken.
Exquisite could definitely be one of the words that you use. But I peaked, and then I was crying, and so yeah, and so I thanked all the souls and everything, and then I just said I need to get up, and so I got up out of my bed and I went into my office and I collapsed on the floor, bawling my eyes out. I am still bawling my eyes out, and you can hear me in the GoPro. I'm 2 rooms away, but you can still hear me screaming and crying. And my girlfriend's like, I don't know what to do. Like, he's never done this before. Like, I've been with him for 3 other trips. I've been with him for a 7-gram trip and 2 3.5 gram trips. Like, I don't know what to do. He's never done this before. And so finally I call her over there. And she comes running over there, and I'm like, and in my head, I knew what I needed to do. And I tell her, hey, grab me my favorite sweatpants. And she brought them into the office for me, and she brought me a blanket as well, because I was in the fetal position, just on a cold hardwood floor in my office. And then I ended up getting up. Just forewarning for everyone, there is some trigger warnings in this. So if you don't want to hear that, then
no, go on, man. Continue.
But
no problem.
yeah, no, I'm gonna say it. I'm just giving everyone a forewarning. But I stood up, and one of my biggest pieces of advice that I've always given and I've always heard is you never, ever, ever fight the magic mushroom. If you're tripping, Absolutely. you don't try and demand from it. You do not try and tell it what to do. If it tells you to do something, generally you'll want to follow that. In this instance, I fought the magic mushroom because the mushroom was telling me to commit suicide. I felt that the only way to get up to a higher level was suicide. And I was so excited. I was like, dude, I'm going to go to this next fucking level. Like, the next fucking level is going to be absolutely insane. And I am so excited. And then there's that like 0.1% of me that was sober that was like, dude, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing right now? This is going to end your life. And so then I started to panic. I was in my office, standing right next to my desk, and I saw my keys on my desk to my gun safe, where I've got all sorts of guns in that thing. I think I've got 12 guns up in there, ranging from handguns to light machine guns. But I looked at my keys, and I'm like, if I want to go to my gun safe right now and grab one, like, my girlfriend's not going to stop me. I am a broken and misplaced God, and there is nobody that can stop me from doing what I'm about to do. And so the sober part of me was like, dude, just get away from your office. Like, get away from those keys. You need to get out of your office. And so I ended up pacing back and forth between my office and my bedroom, and my girlfriend's following me. She doesn't know what's going on inside my head. She just now learned that I took 10 grams. She thought I was going to take 7 grams. I decided to do 10 right as I was weighing everything out. And so she had just learned that I did 10 grams and that I'm peaking on 10 grams, not 7. And I feel horrible that I put her through this, but I ended up stopping in the hallway and like looking at her and telling her word for word. I said, honey, whatever happens, happens. And so like I started panicking. I knew if you're panicking on a magic mushroom trip, you got to ground yourself. You have to ground yourself some way. So I started to like find a way to grab onto something to ground myself with. I started thinking about my motorcycle. I race a motorcycle, so I started thinking about my race bike, my girlfriend, my hamster, anything that I loved dearly to my heart, and I considered something that would crush me if I were to lose it. Nothing worked. My brain had at this point completely split from reality, and words were nothing to me. Time and dates were just completely pointless. It was all just a simulation, and I believed that I was living in a simulation. And so then I ended up just saying, fuck this, I need to restart this trip. So I ended up essentially just falling into my bed and face planting and just telling my girlfriend to find me my trip mask and my earbuds. And so I ended up putting in my earbuds. I don't remember what music I turned on. But I ended up putting in my earbuds, and we eventually found me my trip mask because I had thrown it. It had gone under something, and she was able to eventually find it. And so I ended up laying in bed. And while I was laying in bed, I had 4 concurrent trains of thought all running at the same time with 4 individual sets of emotion all at the same time. And one of those trains of thought was I had just committed some unforgivable sin to humanity, and that I am going to be locked away in prison for the rest of my life. And so I had hallucinated that I was seeing police and SWAT outside of my house, and that my life was over. I was going to prison for the rest of my life. The next train of thought was I had actually killed myself, and I had actually gone through the suicide. And so that was a really big part of where, like, I believed I was living in a simulation and that everything around me was fake now because this was the afterlife and I am now a spirit. And at one point I actually ended up taking off my mask and taking out my earbuds and going into my office to check my gun safe and just look at the door on my gun safe to check if it was closed. Obviously it was, because I'm here with you guys. But that was a horrifying one. The other one was I had a full-blown psychotic break, and that I am stuck in this frame of mind for the rest of my life, and this is how it's going to be. And I ended up hallucinating and having a full-on out-of-body experience that I was being carted away by EMTs and mental health professionals and being taken to a psych ward where I saw my parents look at me and just go, nah, fuck that kid. Like, he's done. He's toast. His brain's shot. We don't need to worry about him. Let's just kind of push him away and just pretend like, just slowly forget about him. And then the final train of thought was one that was really, really incredible. I got to rebuild my brain how I wanted it to be. And I got to pick and choose aspects of my life that I wanted to keep and I wanted to reject and I wanted to throw away. So like my anxiety, I got to throw that away. My depression, I got to throw that away. My PTSD, I got to throw that away. But then like all the good parts, like my spontaneous nature, my joking nature, my like I'm high drive like a Belgian Mal or a German Shepherd where I just have a ton of energy. I got to keep that. I got to keep all this other stuff, and I got to throw away other stuff as well. And so I rebuilt my brain in that moment. And then finally I was able to start to comprehend language again to an extent where I could like understand it. I could speak and I could walk and everything like that while I was speaking, but like it didn't really make sense to me. So I finally got to speak and talk where I could understand it. And I asked my girlfriend, I'm like, honey, what time is it? And I think the time was like 11:06. So I peaked probably about 10:45, 10:50-ish is what I'm guessing. And I was like, okay, I've tripped before. I know about how long these trips should take. Mathematically speaking, I should be done off of this trip probably about 2. So honey, at 4:00, that is my goal. 4:00 is my time hack for me to go and sit on my computer and play Call of Duty with my friends. I just need to make it to 4:00. I did not understand time. I didn't understand dates. I didn't understand anything, but it was something enough for me to grab onto where, okay, I have 5 hours. I don't know what an hour is, but I have 5 of those things that I can now use to better track how I'm doing and understand how I'm coming down, because I can at least understand what's going on because I've tripped several times before this. And so I ended up, I probably asked her a dozen or more times, honey, what time is it? What's today's date? She'd be, it's 11:36 on December 6th, 2022. And so then probably about 1 o'clock, I would say I was sober enough to where I was like, okay, dude, like none of that happened. You just had an ego death. You had a by definition psychotic break. You're okay. You didn't kill yourself. You didn't have a psychotic break. You didn't do an unspeakable thing to humanity. And everything ended up being okay. I obviously ended up telling my girlfriend after the fact. Actually, I was still high. I was still slightly tripping with slight visuals. But I was laying in bed and I was like looking really upset. And she's like, "What's wrong? Like, that was your trip. That was your moment that got you. Like, why do you look so sad?" And so I told her, I'm like, "Honey, look, I about blew my brains out with my shotgun. Like, I about went into my gun safe and grabbed my 12 gauge and just sent it. And there was nothing you could have done to have stopped me." And so she ended up taking my gun safe keys, which I was totally okay with. She and I both agreed, like, I don't need to have access to my guns right now. And so, yeah, that ended up being that. And now we're, what is this, 4 months later, almost to the day, 3 months, 4 months, I think. I don't know. The trip was on December 6th, 2022.
And I guess that's why it's good. That's why it's good to, I guess, record your trips. You know, you can remember it, and you can go through the actions and bring pieces back.
Yeah, but I've also, that's definitely one of them. Another one was I had a 7-gram trip before this where I hallucinated a neon green monkey and I got into a rap battle with him for 2 hours. And where I was like audibly speaking stuff, but I didn't have a GoPro recording, so I didn't get any of anything that I said. So I was really upset. So that's another reason why we put the GoPro up, is because in case something like that happened again, we wanted to be able to go back and watch it and laugh at the stupid things I was saying. Because, dude, I was saying some stupid stuff on that trip. I said, "Hold the beefsteak, brother." There were a bunch of crazy stuff. But, yeah, and plus I like...
Weird.
Dude, that trip's a story for another time. I can tell you all about that trip. That was funny. That was a real fun trip. Came out of it more confused than I went into it with. But yeah. So we're fast forward. I think it's 4 months now, almost to the day -1. So it's March 5th. I've had one anxiety attack, and it was a legitimate anxiety attack too. This wasn't just I'm sitting at my desk and nothing has happened. This was something happened and I ended up having a full-blown legit anxiety attack caused by legitimate reasons. My depression hasn't really been an issue. My PTSD really hasn't been an issue. The one thing I will say, and the one thing I do want to bring to light, is the severity and the intense risk that come about when you go to doses that are this high. I know in the magic mushroom community, we talk a lot about the benefits that come from magic mushrooms. Like for me, like I don't have really my anxiety anymore. I don't really have my depression or my PTSD. Yeah, that is great. But I went into that trip. So many bad things could have come from that trip. I have officially been diagnosed with a form of psychosis from that. Hang on, I'm getting a phone call real quick. Yep.
No problem. So, what do you guys think about that? Like, I guess that he went through every state of mind, like every consciousness.
In my case, I've been learning about positive and negative energy. And those is when you mention about bad trip, you're getting a lot of negative energy around you. That's why those manifestation in your head.
So the bad energy was kind of absorbing him, is what you're saying, and that's how he started to spiral, as he put it, out of control. Well, spiral.
Yeah. So when there's negative energy around, or basically you're absorbing any type of energy when you're on, because everybody is psychic, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, so if you're not um, spiritual awakened, you don't know how to filter out those energy.
Okay. And do you have any kind of like for the people that have that what would you call it, a gift, I would say, or like know how to use it? Do you have
Uh,
any kind of like what would you say, instruction or something?
the best instruction is just go with it.
Just go with it,
Yeah, just go
eh?
with it.
Okay.
All right, I'm back.
Because
Strider said,
it gets complicated.
I
so do your
have,
research, know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have returned, but
Yeah,
so yeah, I think
we were just discussing your trip a little bit and our thoughts on how you went through all this state of mind, and
yeah,
you had pretty much all kinds of trips into one, and the negatives that that's why we don't really recommend, like you were saying, to do those super high doses.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah. So back to I think I was just saying that I had just gotten diagnosed with psychosis. Um, it's a form of psychosis. I don't remember the full name, but it's something about drug withdrawals, which I really don't understand how it can be dealt with or considered a form because of drug withdrawals, but that's what they called it. The reason that I got tested and I got checked is because for probably about 2 or 3 weeks, I would have serious, like severe night terrors where I would wake up in the middle of the night, um, and like I would lose my shit, like just completely unhinged. Uh,
Oh,
uh,
wish I could tell you what you're going through.
Dude, it was rough. And then on top of that, I have these now really bad episodes, disassociative episodes, where I disassociate back to the peak of that trip, where I am again suicidal, and I am believing that everything around me is a simulation, that everything is fake, and everything has been planted here to make me think that I'm still alive, and that like I might be but in reality I might be in a loony ward, or I might be really dead, or something like that. So those been, um,
you're cutting in and out.
Yeah, you're cutting
I'm
it.
cutting in. Oh, you said I'm cutting
We're
in and
having
out.
some technical difficulties.
You're losing connection.
Can y'all hear me?
But yeah, there's an actual term for that. I know what you're talking about, and I can't remember what it is. And it's where you see, like, you still have trips after the trip. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yeah, I
No,
guess.
he's having nightmares
And
because
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah. So to answer your question of am I still having trips after the trip? In a sense, yeah, I guess you could say that, but it's not none of the visuals or anything like that. It's complete headspace. And it's exclusive.
it's residual. What is it called?
But I think that we need to bring to light more of the serious potential issues that can come from you doing these massive trips, because and I don't know, maybe it's just because I myself did one of these trips and I'm now seeing a lot of it, but I'm seeing a lot of stories and stuff everywhere, especially on the r/shroom subreddit, where people are like, I'm doing 50, I'm doing 20 grams. It's like,
You're get-
bro, like you need to understand the like if you can accept, you might end up
you're cutting out again.
fan.
You're cutting out.
Mm.
Hello, hello.
Hey, we're still here, man. We're still here. Yeah, like I was saying, there's There's a terminology for that, but I just can't remember what it was. What do you, Strider? You said you might know something.
It's the theory of limited return. You can't keep going past a point because the chemical itself will become inefficient. And it sounds like his personal dosage of his body's chemistry was close to about 10 grams. I bet if he did an 11 gram or 12 gram trip, it would probably have a similar experience because he physically can't experience more than 10 grams at a time.
Thanks for listening. You can find us on Discord at The Magic Mushroom Speaks. You can also listen to us on Amazon Music, Spotify, Player FM, TuneIn Plus Alexa, and Google Podcast and iHeartRadio. Hope to see you in the fifth dimension on the next edition.